to look behind the curtain and willing to look for new things, so I was given all sorts of opportunities. That was part of business, and it meant working with other people, and the idea was to create new concepts of looking at things, and in turn to be involved in the shall we say, precision inspection end of various things, which also went to the production end. So here was another teacher, and if I were to talk about Ed Heineman, their chief engineer at El Segundo, became a very good friend. We worked together on many things. And then Lee Atwood, who was president of North American and developed the P-51 and so many other things, Lee and I met in 1941 or 42 when I was over there in connection with intercompany things. And there was this wonderful man. We became acquainted. We talked about many things, asked a lot of questions, and we were friends for life. So it's rather hard to ask a question, and I know it's a simple question, but everything goes together in different components to move in the direction. You're always seeking education, and that education may take you almost anywhere in business. Well, Kilroy Realty was the last of the activities. It's a public company, a real estate investment trust, and it's today a major company in that field. I'm chairman. My son, who I put to work when he was 7 years old, is CEO of the company, and he's been trained all of his life in that field. But I got into that in an interesting way. It was obvious during World War II, when I was working with Douglas, that we were the aerospace, communication, electronic capital of the world, and people were discovering California, and many of them were from the East, and it was obvious that we would have growth after the world after we made the transition from one phase to the other. And a little over a year and a half before the war ended, I decided that I would go Air Force. I had been trained to fly, so I thought I should get away from the company end and look around in perspective. And thinking about where the industry was going, it was obvious that many new buildings, new facilities would be required, because what we had were a bunch of old dogs for the most part. I wanted to get into a different element so I could become involved. I'd been in many of the outside manufacturing facilities. And as I say, new ideas were there and new concepts and otherwise. So when I got out of the service, I did get into combat. I was doing a lot of similar things, and I was doing some flying and instructing in Arizona. We had the Chinese that we were training and some other specialized things. And so I thought, okay, I am going to be in the facilities business for this new industry that is developing, and there's a lot of opportunity, and there's different ways to design things. So I thought about that intensely in the Air Force, and when I got out, I got into the real estate business to get a feel of it and an understanding and acquaintance. I liquidated assets for some of the banks that had their issues. But in the meantime, I was working on new design ideas and new facilities. And I would take to the facilities department of the aircraft industry designs on a site that was available, buildings that I thought would fit them, and I had met many of them. And I said, help me with what your design ideas are, coupled with many changes that we made. And by helping in the liquidation of assets for some of the banks and others, I established sources of financing. I think when I got out of the Air Force, I had $165 a car and a child. And so there's no such thing. There's an old joke that's called "There's no such thing as being a little pregnant." Now, the people in the industry had these drawings. They had made their input in them. They thought of these plans and designs now as theirs, which was the basic game plan to get the intelligence but get the participation. And they were designed towards what I thought were their needs. And so they would say, okay, give us a rental quote or a price quote. And I would check with my financial world, and in turn be able to structure some financing. At that time, everybody was anxious to build and lease to them or build and sell to them the building that they had participated in the design of it. So I then used a construction company which I subsequently acquired, and we developed a team. And then a big issue, I had been able to scrape some funds together to buy a parcel of property with a down payment, but someone paid cash for it, a beautiful 60-acre parcel near Northrop. So I said, well, I should talk to the man who bought it. I talked to him. He just planned to subdivide it and sell it. We structured some new ideas, sold him on the idea of participation and managing the operation and also being the broker with the participation and the contractor. And that was a more active start. And that came along just before the Korean War, which precipitated a lot of things. And so from that, it grew in many directions. Motivating people, building people, and in turn, letting them help build me. But you've got to participate in things. You've got to stand for things. So it's been fun in so many ways. I've had the occasion, as I say, to be asked to be chairman of commissions. And one of the commissions happened to be the Port Authority, Los Angeles Port Authority. It was having its problems. The former president had been found floating in the bay. There were some rather typical influences that seemed to exist around the port. Sam Yorty was our mayor at that time. Sam was a good friend, and we've done some other things together. And so Sam asked me, and I said, okay, Sam, I'll do it, but you've got to give me 100% support, which means I'm in charge. And I said, if you don't, then I'm out of here. He did. We communicated with each other. We brought in some very good people. We changed some things around, and as graciously as possible, and some had to be less gracious. And we got participation, a lot of help from a lot of people, and it became a real profit center. Or we get into other things. I was chairman to get the Olympic Games for our Southern California for our quincentennial year, our 500th. I'm sorry, for our 200th year anniversary of our country, and we didn't get it, but we did some very interesting things. We had quite a battle with the Russians, which you may or may not have read about on that. But out of that, we established the concept of no-cost Olympics, which meant, with the help of many in the communications industry, we changed the overall plan of the International Olympic Committee and how we structured television and otherwise. I did some things that Peter was able to carry on In '84, I was asked to take '84, but you do it once, you don't want to do it again. They made a couple $100 million out of that concept. But that concept was a participation by a team, where we took all the parts, all the components apart, and put all the components back together again. Paul was on that team that we're talking about, Paul Zimmerman, Bill Nicholas from the Coliseum, a lot of other great people, and they brought together, they were all motivated, and they all worked together as a team, working without the vanity, with each other's intelligence to try to get something accomplished. So if you answer what's my biggest accomplishment, it's motivation. But it's got very fundamental things to it, and I would describe it to you as this. I hear two people talking and one says, I know it. That means he probably doesn't know a damn thing about it. But I like the Air Force routine. You're flying with a co-pilot. You're talking to a controller. The controller tells you what he wants you to do. The co-pilot repeats it to the pilot, exactly. The pilot repeats it back exactly to the co-pilot. Or if two people are having a conversation, you do something very similar so you really understand, because people only hear about 40% of what's said. So, motivation, mutual improvement, personal improvement. I guess you have to say what I've done, or what I've tried to do. I don't know, everybody's going to have different memories in different ways. I think that motivation with young people and others, and trying to help others, leadership, trying to face reality, and it could go in many ways. It could go in business. It can go into the fact, if you have strong beliefs, put those strong beliefs in force and effect. If you get something for nothing, it's worth nothing. My greatest disappointment is our drifting away from a wonderful, starting, hard-working educational system into something that takes away the motivation, or doesn't build the motivation, that so many children, and particularly the young people who may not have the means, even though the opportunity is there, they're downplaying the absolute essential of being in a world, a free world of wonderful competition, whereby your mutual competition, you improve life for everyone. I've been in something involved in something for many years, since the mid-50s, and it's called sailboat racing. An ultra-competitive, a very physical, a very technical sport with young people, and all of my crew have been amateurs, and yet you see the excellence of the rating with those amateurs who had some training, perhaps others, but the discipline and the training and the organization and the motivation in using the critical mass of their brain power along with yours in motivating these young people. And now they came in as amateurs, they went out as amateurs, but we had something else. They could only sail with me for 3 years unless they had a future program a lifetime program in effect. If they didn't think enough of themselves to have their own career into the future, out of sailing, off the boat. And I take a look at those hundreds of crews and what they've done in their life and the letters that I have for them. I'm writing a book in connection with motivation, and it's a wonderfully thrilling thing. And then comes the case of leadership. You have to respect, if we were sailing, we sailed up to 26 at times in closed course racing in 80-foot boats. Normally, if we were sailing across the ocean, we'd have 17. And you're out in a horrible storm, hurricane, really horrible, some others. And you have leadership, and you have teamwork, and you have the integration and the self-confidence in the leadership in the organization that everybody does their job. And we even laugh. Now, that is, of course, helping myself. I have to be calm, I have to be focused, I have to speak slowly, and it's, in some ways, it makes it sound crazy, but it's fun. But it's fun watching the team work together in mutual self-interest and still being competitors. So I look at that as teaching leadership. I look at that as teaching mutual respect, and I look at that as training a group of young men and working with them that can go very far in their life if they want to keep the spirit going. And that, to me, is a great achievement. We should always remember our roots. And we should become involved. We should become involved on a positive basis, not a negative basis. No challenge is too great, because at the worst you could lose. And every loss is an education. Your successes come from your come from your losses. If we're trying anything scientifically or technically, you have to take it step by step by step. But every step can be an emotional loss. And you also have to make up your mind. Many people think that, oh, doing this is too big for them. They don't try, how do they know? How do they know? So it's in the satisfaction of trying, of thinking, so much could be done. But we should be blessed, because did you ever stop to think? We never have the answers. You do not have the answers because there's going to be a new, improved answer tomorrow. And when people say, I know, it shuts off conversation, they close their mind, and they fail to recognize that that new answer is coming along. And the designer of our system has done a never-ending job.